Hey, welcome. Today we have David Lennon from Newcastle University in the UK, which has the largest medical program in the UK. And I thought today we'd talk about what it takes to get into medical school. And David is very knowledgeable in this area. He sits on the board. He's an interviewer for medical candidates. So we're going to just jump right in. David, thank you for being with us today.
No problem. Nice to be here. Good morning.
Good morning. So we're going to just jump right in. How do I apply for medicine to go through UCAT to go to medical school in the UK?
All university admissions in the UK are carried out through UCAT. So that's the Universities and Colleges Admission Service. So if you want to apply for anything in the UK, you have to apply through UCAT. A very handy way to do it. It's a very cheap way to do it. You pay one admin fee. You can make up to 5 university choices on one application, and the same application is read by all 5 university choices. If you're applying for medicine, you can only apply for 4 medical schools. There are about 40 medical schools in the UK. Telling you can only apply for 4 isn't such a bad thing, because you're going to have to find a way of narrowing down which 4 you're going to apply for anyway. You can't apply for all of them. The process is that most universities, all universities will ask for your high school grades. So whether you're doing IEB or a baccalaureate system or a Cambridge system, you have to apply with your school scores. Most of them will ask for a standardized test as well on top of that. So there's a couple of ones that are common in the UK. The first is BMAT, which is quite commonly used for some of the US medical schools as well. The second is UCAT, which is the university's clinical aptitude test. And that's more commonly used in the UK and in Australia too. And that's kind of like an IQ test. It asks you to make situational judgments and verbal reasoning and things like that. It's something you can prepare for, but it doesn't test medical knowledge. It's more of an aptitude test. And you will apply through UCAT to your 4 choices with your probably predicted grades at the time you have to apply and your standardized test score. The academic year in the UK starts in September, so you'll be enrolling in the university in September. The deadline to apply for medicine and dentistry is the 15th of October of the year before, so the previous year. So if you're applying for medicine to start in September 2022, the deadline will be the 15th of October 2021. All medical schools in the UK will invite candidates to interview as well. So the component parts would be your high school performance, your standardized test scores, and then your performance at interview. Be aware that the deadline for most programs is the 15th of January, but the deadline for medicine is the 15th of October.
Okay, David. So thanks for that. So now what begs the next question actually is, how do you qualify? And also, in addition to that, once you've qualified, how do you specialize?
Yeah, that's one of the big things. I think if people are comparing different systems, if they want to go abroad to study, one of the things that they'll notice about the UK is that we have direct entry for medicine. So there's no pre-med degree or anything like that. You go straight from high school into medical school, which is a big plus for us. The MBBS degree that you get, so some universities will call it something slightly different. At Newcastle, we call it an MBBS, which is a Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery. So you get the title of doctor as your professional title, but it's not actually a doctorate. It's a double bachelor's degree. It's a Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery. In England and Wales, it's a 5-year degree. So you would come from high school and you would enroll in the medical school, and it's a 5-year period of study. There will be some courses in Scotland which are 6 years, because they have a slightly different high school system in Scotland. So you do your MBBS, and then you do 2 years following that of what we call foundation years training, or you can call it houseman training or internships. So you do 2 years where you're rotating through different departments of the hospital, and into general practice as well. So you might do a few months in general practice, then a few months as a pediatrician, and a few months in emergency medicine, doing different types of things. So you fully qualify as a doctor after 7 years at an English university like ours. In the UK, one of the other major differences between different systems is that we have completely free universal healthcare in the UK through the National Health Service, the NHS. So all of our medical schools are preparing doctors to practice in the NHS. So we're preparing students who graduate from medicine for really just one career path, which is to work in a British hospital as a British doctor in our system. And in that system, if you want to specialize, let's say I want to become a pediatrician, I will complete my 7 years and become a doctor, and then I will apply for a job in the pediatrician ward or in the pediatrician department, pediatrics, and I'll work in that department until I'm a senior person in that department, and then I can call myself a senior pediatrician. So there's no postgraduate element of training in the UK. You can't come back and you can't come to the UK to, let's say, I'm going to do a master's in pediatrics or a master's in emergency medicine, because there is no such thing in the UK. You just work in that department until you're a senior doctor in that department. So all the training is done in service as part of your professional development. So there is a slight difference in that there isn't any training for specialisms in the UK.
What are some of the differences in the medicine programs, and how to go about choosing for a student to choose which is the right one for them? The difference in teaching and learning styles and
Yeah, that's one of the big challenges. I think people get baffled by thinking, okay, this medical program is number one in the rankings, or this is the most famous one, therefore it's the best one. Mm-hmm. But that's just not true. I mean, that's not true for really any subject. So if I go and study physics and I learn all about Newton's laws and things like that, they're the same things, whether I learn it at Oxford or whether I learn it in Newcastle. And it's the same with medicine. Like, what you're being taught is the same, and so it's how they teach it which is the real difference, and the culture of learning and teaching at the place is the real difference. And yeah, there are about 40 medical schools in the UK. You have to choose just 4, so there has to be a way of narrowing it down. And one of the things that they're probably going to ask you at your interview is, why did you choose us? You know, what is it about the program here that made you think it was right for you? And a lot of that will be a reflection on your own learning style and understanding the program, and being able to articulate that you think that the teaching style on that program will match your own learning style. So some of the words that you might come across when you start researching medical schools will be things like an integrated program. And you might say, oh, well, this university is saying that their medical school offers an integrated program. What does that mean? So traditionally, a normal university degree, you would do lectures and seminars, and they would talk to you about things, and then you would do lab work, and then you would be tested on that in an exam, and then you would qualify. And that is what we describe as a very traditional a traditional style of teaching. We sit you down and we tell you stuff, and at the end of the term we test to see if you've learned it. That's quite traditional. And there are universities that teach medicine that way still. I think some of the Oxford and Cambridge colleges still teach a traditional style. Some medical schools will do a non-clinical period followed by a clinical period. So it was quite common until a few years ago for universities to do the first 2 years would be quite similar to a pre-med type thing that you'll get in the US. The first 2 years would be lecture material, lab work, maybe working on prosection or dissection, but not seeing any live patients for the first 2 years, so a non-clinical period of 2 years. And the advantage of that is that by the time you start seeing patients in year 3, you've got a really, really sound knowledge, and it helps you really build confidence in your knowledge and your theoretical knowledge before you start seeing patients in the real world. So for some people, they would think, I want to spend 2 years building that confidence and that knowledge before I go and see patients. An integrated style is one where you would see patients from the very start. So you would probably, in the first week of medical school, you would be in the hospital learning to do things like taking blood samples and getting veins in people's arms right from the very first week as an integrated style. So the theory and the practice go absolutely hand in hand from the first week all the way through the 5 years. So some people think, okay, what I want to do is I want to go in and start working with people straight away. I want to be week 1 in the hospital with a white coat on. I want to take my oath and I want to get into the hospital and start working with people. And some people would think, I would rather spend a couple of years really getting the theory down before I start, before I go into action. And those are
touching people. Yeah.
And those are just different. And one is not better than the other, but they're differences. And Newcastle teaches an integrated style. And if you come to interview at Newcastle, they'll say, so why do you think an integrated style suits you? It's a simple question. The other things that you might hear are schools talking about being case-based or problem-based. And those relate to how your learning style, how much of affinity you have for self-led study. So some schools would say, okay, this is a patient, and they're presenting with these symptoms and they're saying this, and they might bring somebody in at the start of this class, like an actor or a real patient, and they'll say, go away and research what you think might be the problem with this person. And it will be very self-led, self-guided, and they'll give you a problem or they will give you a case, and you will have to go and solve that problem. Because some people learn best by doing their own research and finding out for themselves. They don't learn best by sitting in a lecture theatre and having stuff just lectured at them. They learn best by going out and trying to research. So you will get people at schools who teach by giving you problems or giving you cases. And it's another thing around which way around you see learning about the human body. Some schools will teach you about, okay, this semester we're going to learn all about the circulatory system. And we're going to tell you everything about the circulatory system and everything that can go wrong with that and other diseases that might affect the circulatory system. And some other schools will say, this year we're going to talk to you about cancer. And we're going to talk to you about all the systems in the body that a cancer can affect and all the ways that it can present and all the symptoms that people have. So some will talk about like a system at a time, and some will talk more holistically about a disease at a time. And again, that's just something that will make more sense to some people than others. Some people will think, well, of course you should talk about the holistic effects of cancer. Or actually, of course you should talk about everything that can affect the liver, because the liver is like, it makes more sense to just learn about things one organ at a time. So there are different styles in teaching and learning. And one is not better than the other. They just make more sense to certain types of learners. And then if we say that you have to narrow it down to 4 anyway, the best chance of success that you have and the best chance of mapping properly onto the right course will be to find the university that teaches in a way that you learn. And they will expect that interview for you to have reflected on your own learning style and to be confident that you've made the right choice about which university to apply for. The other thing that I'd say quickly about choosing medical school is that you will be doing your placements and certainly your clinical placements during years 3, 4, or 5 of the MBBS at a local hospital. And the kind of cases and the kind of patients you see and you learn to deal with will vary according to which region that you study in. So if you are working at a hospital in an inner city, that's very different in terms of casework than if you were learning at a hospital in a more rural area. So you'll have to think, do I want to be looking at kind of older patients and patients with mobility issues, or am I interested in maybe working with people with mental health issues? Well, gunshot wounds, probably not in the UK, to be fair, but not very much in the UK. But certainly in the inner cities, you might see people who have got more like substance abuse and dependency issues, which would be more common in the inner cities. And there will be victims of more violent crime. We don't really have guns in this country, but there'll be differences in different types of patients that you see according to where you physically where you choose to learn. Okay, so importantly, the most important question, I suppose, now is and the one that I hear most often when people want to go into medicine is what subjects do I need to take and what grades do I need to take? It is the most common question I get asked: which grades do I need and what subjects do I need? And it is something that will. The first thing to say is that everybody who applies to medicine is a top student. So if we say you need straight A's, or you need 5 or 6 subjects at grade 7, or you need 38 points off the IB, everybody who applies to medicine gets those grades. So I'm not talking specifically about the program at Newcastle today, but I know the most about our program. So for every place that we have for medicine, we get 8 applications who've got the grades. So if you get the grades, you've got an 8 to 1 chance of being admitted. That's for the 5-year program. So getting the grades doesn't get you into medicine, and that doesn't differentiate you. It just means that you're in the pool of applications that we're reading, and then even then you've got an 8 to 1 chance. The subjects that you need the subjects that you choose might limit your options. So there will be universities who say you must take life sciences, you must take chemistry, you must take this or that. But there are universities who don't. So at Newcastle, we don't have any subject requirements at all. So we don't ask you to take any science subjects. You can be a completely humanities subject. You could have taken history, drama, literature, anything. We don't require sciences. So if you don't take science subjects, then it might limit the number of universities which you can look at. So because there will be universities that say you must take life sciences or biology, but actually you're trying to find ways of narrowing down your options anyway. So you can only apply to 4. So you have to have a way of narrowing down your options. And if your tutors are saying to you, if you take history, you'll probably get a 7, but if you take life sciences, you might only get a 4. Take history because it's far easier to get in with a list of 7s than forcing yourself to take a science subject and only getting a 4, because nobody's going to take you if you've got the wrong grades. So I would always say just take the subjects that you're best at, that you enjoy most. The best ways of maximizing your chance of getting into medical school is to find the admissions process. So each university has a different admissions process and a different admissions policy and a different set of admissions criteria. So the best way to maximize your chances is to find the process that you think you perform best at. And it'll be things like how much weight do they put onto the different components of your application. So we will ask for certain grades from high school. We will ask you for certain test scores. We will ask you for an interview. But how much weight do we put on all of those? And what I mean by that is, so at Newcastle, talking about my school, we look at all the people who've applied for medicine that year, and you can imagine it like a pile of application forms on a desk. We look at all the applications, and anybody who's got the grades that we ask for, we move on to the next pile. Then we think, okay, we've got a UCAT score that we're looking for this year, and I'll come back to UCAT score in a second. But we think, okay, we're going to interview everybody who gets above a certain threshold on UCAT, and we take those and we move them to the next pile. And that's our interview pile. And then we think, okay, we're going to interview all the people on this pile. And then the people who are successful at interview, they're the ones who we admit. So using that system, using our system, you could say that UCAT is a very important part of that because it's a direct sifting stage. If you get above the UCAT threshold, you're in. If you get below the UCAT threshold, you're out. So you can pass or fail in that process by your UCAT score alone. So it's quite an important part of that process. Now, there are universities, so you should apply for that process if you've got a really good UCAT score. Now, there are universities who use the high school score and the UCAT score and the performance at interview in kind of like a weighted average. They've got an equation where they work out scores for each of those 3 parts. And at the end, it spits out a number about whether you should be admitted or not. And then UCAT is just part of a weighted average system. So you could say, actually, if you don't perform particularly well in your UCAT score, then maybe apply for a system where they're just giving that a weighting rather than a direct sifting element. So there are universities that put a lot more weight on UCAT than others. So that's a clever thing to do, because you can ask people like me, what is your admissions process? How do you decide? And if you come to an event, or if you go to Heidi and say, what grades do you ask? It'll always be 7s, 8s. That doesn't teach you anything. But if you ask, how do you decide how to admit for a medicine? Then you start to learn things like this. Okay, well, I think I'm really, really good at IQ tests. So I'll apply for a school that puts more weight on that sort of thing and maybe less weight on interview because I'm pretty shy, but I'm good in tests. So there's different sorts of people who'll perform in different sorts of processes. The other thing is about what style of interview we do. So some universities will do traditional panel interviews. So we do panel interviews, but the panel is only 2 members. It's not a great big boardroom table that you have to sit at. But you will sit opposite the same 2 people and they'll talk to you for 45, 50 minutes about various topics. And that's one style. The other style is what we call MMIs, or multiple mini interviews, where you'll you'll move from station to station. And each station might last 5, 6, 7 minutes, and you'll move rapidly from problem to problem. And some of those will be role plays. So they might have professional actors who come in and role play with you. Some of those will be problem solving. Some of them will be just a member of staff who asks you a question, and you'll move on station to station. It's probably easier to prepare for a panel interview because you can probably work out what they're going to ask you. But then, the other point of view is an MMI doesn't advantage people who are better at preparing. it's just coming in and looking at situations, and it's just kind of spur of the moment decision making. And some people are just better at that short term, here's a situation, what will I do with the situation? And some people are better at, okay, I'm going to sit and I'm going to talk to people about how I should answer interview questions. If you're somebody who takes a while to get comfortable, then sometimes going and doing a panel interview where you're with the same people for a period of time is easier than moving from person to person. But so there are different. Just have a think about, would I be better at an MMI or would I be better at a panel interview? Because where I'm saying it's an 8-to-1 chance of getting in, even if you get the grades, those little things of, okay, I think I'll do slightly better at a panel than an MMI, or the other way around, might be the difference between you getting in or not. I'll just come back to the one of the things that I get asked a lot about by people who've done a little bit of research is what your UCAT threshold or cutoff point is. And that's a difficult question to answer. I don't know why people ask that. I think they get told to ask that in schools, but it's not a helpful question, because we normally we interview above a percentile. So the actual number that was that percentile last year is completely different every year. So it's not actually helpful to ask what the threshold is, because we might say we're going to invite to interview the top 30%, or we're going to interview the top 900 who apply this year. It's very rare for you. I mean, and actually last year, the 900th person might have had a UCAT of 2,300. So if you ask me what the cutoff was, well, last year it was 2,300, but it wasn't really 2,300, it was 900 people. So to come in and say, what do you interview at? Well, I mean, it's difficult, because it depends on what the performance is this year and how many people apply and what type of people apply with which scores, because we don't really have a cutoff. We can tell you what the cutoff was retrospectively, but it wasn't a number that we thought of and interviewed at that cutoff. So it's kind of a misleading question, and I don't really know why people ask it, because it takes a lot of work for me to go and find that out. And even if I do find it out, it's irrelevant. So
it's all relative. It's relative to what the cohort is in that year, I suppose.
Yeah.
So and I suppose also with what's going on now with COVID, that also is a moving target as well, because people are learning in different ways.
It's more important to ask the question, how much weight do you give to UCAT? Like when I talked about that sifting, you will know whether you've got a UCAT score that feels good. And if you think, okay, my UCAT score, it feels like it was good compared to the other people who I know that took the test. So then you can think, okay, this is a strong one or an average one, and which kind of process do you go? Asking what we interview at, like we don't know until the following year. So I don't know why people get told or think they need to ask that, because it's not a helpful question. I would just say that with all the process of what we're talking about, the fact that I've said that we don't ask for sciences at Newcastle, the fact that we admit students based on their interview rather than their grades, because everybody gets the grades. The things that we're really looking for medics are you a caring person, a compassionate person? Do you empathize with different groups of people easily? Are you at ease working with people who are elderly and very young and very scared and with learning difficulties? Do you work well with all those different kinds of people? Are you a caring person naturally, or is it something you're having to work at because you want to go into medicine? These things are quite transparent when it comes to interview. How are you in a team? What is your experience of working in a team? What is your understanding of where a doctor is, what their place is in a team? Lots of people think that they want to go into medicine because they think the doctor is a leader within the medical team. It's just not true. It's false.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of people who come to interview and they think, well, at school I'm a leader. I'm in a leadership position. I'm a prefect or a head boy. I'm the captain of a sports team. I'm a natural leader, and so I want to be a doctor because doctors are natural leaders. They're not. But it's equally as important for doctors to know when one of their other healthcare colleagues has the expertise. That's the skill. When is it appropriate for me to step up, and when is it appropriate for me to stop and listen? And that is a very rare skill, actually. When I see students at medical interviews, that is the thing that most of them don't have. That's how, that's a skill that's a real 1 in 8 skill. Like my final pieces of advice would be to get some team working experience, work in a team, and that can be a sports team. It can be any, work in a church group or in a charity or in a project or a sport, anything. But get some team working experience and really try and spot situations where it's appropriate for you to take the lead and know when it's appropriate to listen to somebody else's advice, because that's the most important skill for a doctor. Doctors do not know everything. The other thing is to get some understanding of what a doctor actually does, because I speak to lots of people who want to apply for medicine, but it turns out that they don't actually know what a doctor does. They think a doctor does everything. And they've maybe shadowed a doctor and talked to a doctor, but they've never shadowed a nurse or a physiotherapist or a medical scientist or a hospital manager or somebody who works in public health outreach or somebody who works in research. And they come to me and they say, the hospitals where I live, they're terribly managed, and I have to go and I have to wait hours and hours and hours. So what I really want to do is sort out the health service in the hospital where I live by becoming a doctor. That's not what doctors do. The doctor will go in there and pull their hair out, the same as all the other doctors, about the fact that there's no beds and there's no drugs. But doctors don't solve those problems. Or I'll speak to people and I'll say, why do you want to be a doctor? And they'll say, well, my grandfather died of cancer and I want to find a new cure for that type of cancer. I'm sorry, doctors don't do that. So just really understand where the doctor is in that system. If the system of allied health professions, there are hundreds and hundreds of them, and they all, I want to care for people. I want to help my community. I want to do something good in my life. I enjoy science. I enjoy learning about the human body. The answers that people commonly give to the question, why do you want to be a doctor? Those don't answer the question, why do you want to be a doctor? They answer the questions, why do you want to work in healthcare? And there are hundreds of jobs in healthcare that all would fulfill all of those things. And in the medicine interview, they're going to say, okay, so there's hundreds and hundreds of different allied health careers, and you've applied for this one. Why have you applied for this one? And people say, I want to find out about the human body, and I really enjoy science. Okay, but why this one? And they don't understand what a doctor does. One of the most important skills a doctor has is evidence-based decision making, because there are lawyers in hospitals as well. And if you make a decision, they have to say, you might be called to account. Why did you make that decision? Well, the evidence was this, and so my judgment. This is a very important skill to have evidence-based decision making. And the first decision we see you make is you're applying to medicine. What evidence do you have to suggest that you would make a good doctor? What other things have you explored? What other options have you explored? Or are you the sort of person who would think, well, I know how to treat this patient, I'm going to treat them, I'm going to give them this drug, without considering any other treatment as well? It's a really significant thing that people shouldn't think lightly of. The first decision that we see you make is that you've applied to medicine. What is your evidence? Why do you think that this is right for you? Why do you think this is the right decision? And we want to see that you've really carefully considered that and not just gone, well, I'm top of my class and I'm great at biology, so obviously medicine, which is actually what most people do when they apply for medicine.
Yeah, thank you for that, David. That's very, very good insight, because in some ways it kind of flies in the face of what a lot of high schools are about, getting those top grades, making sure you get the most bachelor passes, making sure you get the most A's, and it's actually it's a bigger picture than that. So thank you for pointing that out. That really, it's a very good point, and I think it'll help a lot, with kids really considering, is medicine really the choice, or is it biomedicine, or is it biomedical sciences, or is it physio, or is it nursing? And because those are also very important allied medical professions in the big picture. 100%.
And the people who are interviewing might well be nurses. So if you go to the medical interview and they say, why do you want to be a doctor? And you say, because I really, really enjoy caring for people. They might say, well, why not be a nurse like me? And that's going to completely stump you, because you can't go, oh, well, because doctors are better than nurses. No, can't say that. What am I going to say? Because you haven't thought about it.
Right.
And there are things that are available to a doctor in their career that aren't available to nurses in their career. That's true. But can you articulate those things, and can you map them to your own personality and have you ever actually thought, why shouldn't you be a nurse? If you really want to care for people, why not nursing? To be an advanced nursing practitioner, and you can move into a position of leadership within nursing. Those are things that are all available within nursing. Really think about why not nursing, because they'll probably ask you in the interview. If you start saying, because I want to care for people is the reason I've applied for medicine, the obvious question is, well, why not nursing then? It's a very, very common interview question.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for your wisdom and for being with us today. It's a really important interview. So thank you very much. And thanks for your time.
No problem at all. It's been nice. It's been good to speak to you. Yeah, thank you very much.